Joining me now is Sriyan Pietersz. He's the head of research of Asean and frontier markets at JP Morgan, and he joins us from our Bangkok studios today. Good Tuesday to you, Sriyan. So underperformance in the first half for Thai stocks. Interesting, because you still think the SET will hit 845 at year end.
That's right. I think the issue is that in the first half we expect to see quite a lot of news flow, negative news flow on politics, as well as I think perhaps a slightly lower than expected growth rate at the macro level because of slower fiscal stimulus spending. But I think that in the second half, hopefully we should see the politics situation stabilizing a bit. That will help to improve sentiment and flows into the market. And also I expect to see fiscal stimulus ramping up in the second half.
All right, so 845 at year end, that's about 150 points from here. So some good gains left in the year 2010. I guess it's a tale of two halves for this year. So let me just ask you, in the short term, then, are you recommending to clients to put on some shorts?
No, I don't really expect the market to fall very sharply either. I think it's going to trade in a fairly tight range, say between 650 and 750 thereabouts, which is not really enough in a market this illiquid rather, to really make some money on the shorts. I think basically I would hold a fairly conservative portfolio of stocks at this point, with a longer term, sort of a 12-month horizon.
Yeah, and conservative meaning the sectors of banks, property, and consumer sectors, right?
That's correct.
Okay, let's talk about these specific names then, because, yeah, go ahead.
No, within the banks, I think the issue with the banks is that we're seeing pretty strong demand coming through from the export sector, which is translating into demand for working capital and for expansion within the SME sector, and also within specific industries like electronics and autos. And I think that will benefit banks' loan growth. And banks currently have very high excess liquidity, and transferring that excess liquidity, which is generating very low returns at the moment, into high-yielding loans will, I think, generate pretty decent operating leverage and therefore benefit earnings. So we should see some pretty decent upgrades in the banks. And within the banks, I would stay with the big banks, Siam Commercial Bank and K Bank, both of which have good exposure to SMEs, and also which have high checking and savings account deposits, which means that they'll be quite sticky in terms of rising interest rates, allowing them to improve margins as rates move up in the second half.
Yeah, Kaiserkorn Bank and Siam Commercial are your two picks, and both of these stocks are up 19% and also 11% respectively since your last appearance in June. Now, in the past, Sriyan, you've also talked about Bank of Ayuda. In fact, I think that was the first Thai banking stock you mentioned. So why the rotation from Bank Ayuda into Kaiserkorn and also Siam Commercial?
Right. I think still Bay is an extremely interesting bank from the perspective of growth, because that will benefit from retail growth in particular, retail loan growth in particular, which is mortgages and consumer type lending. However, valuations have also climbed quite a lot, and as a result, I can't really see Bay outperforming the other two banks this year in 2010. The other issue, of course, is that it's a higher beta stock. And in this environment, I would prefer to stay with a slightly more conservative portfolio.
Yeah, and you know, on a price-to-book basis, I would say that looking at 2 times book for both these stocks, I'm talking about Siam Commercial and Kaiserkorn Bank, some might say that's not exactly cheap in the global banking world, especially across the Asia-Pac.
Right. We've got them on slightly lower multiples. We've got Siam Commercial about 1.7 times price to book, and K Bank a little bit lower, 1.6 times price to book. And we think that in compared to the kind of growth that we expect them to generate this year, plus the potential for upgrades from the SME sector, for instance, makes those probably the most attractive banks in the sector. And certainly,
okay,
relative to the region.
Yeah, investors love to hear about upside.
Relative to the region, right. Relative to the region, Thai banks trade at a fairly big discount, about 30%, but that's pretty much in line with sort of their average discount.
Okay, so let's talk about upside then, because as I mentioned to you, investors love hearing about the plus percentage points. What's the outlook for these two banking names? How much could they gain in the year 2010?
I think both of these banks could generate returns of between 25 to 30% in 2010, which is significantly higher than the return we expect for the index overall.
Okay, now before we get a commercial break, I just want to highlight this one stock that you're recommending as well, which is BEC World. It's a diversified media company which also does broadcasting, et cetera, et cetera. It's down 5.6% though year to date so far. And with everyone suggesting that the media world is collapsing at this point, there is no market for media at this point. Why do you like this stock still? Overweight on it with actually a more bullish target price than other analysts that we surveyed.
Right. Well, I think Thailand's a slightly different case from perhaps global media in the sense that Thai TV is still one of the biggest media segments for Thai consumers, and also we're expecting some rate hikes this year for BEC, possibly even in the first quarter. And in an environment where there's always where there's some political tension, people will be watching TV a lot, which means opportunities for advertisers on TV. So we think that BEC actually will be a very strong performer this year.